Looking back on the week that was and forward to the week ahead. It's the Fantasy Football Hustle. Here are your hosts, Brian Drake and Dwain McFarland.
All across the fantasy universe, welcome to week 11 of the Fantasy Football Hustle, powered by Pro Football Focus. I'm Brian Drake, joined as always by the analytical assassin, PFF.com senior fantasy analyst, Dwain McFarland. On tonight's show, we're going to walk through Dwain's utilization report that is live over at PFF.com, touch on the major stories in fantasy football, along with preparing you for the upcoming trade deadlines in your fantasy league. I know I have one in a Yahoo league that is Saturday night at midnight. So if you're in a league with me, you're going to be getting texts and messages all week long, and I'll be annoying Dwain with thoughts and things on that. But that's why the utilization report is so key. It's a great reference point to go back to as you're looking to make deals and say, well, what's this guy really doing? How often is he playing? What's his targets look like lately? It's a great asset, folks. I can't stress it enough. Go over to pff.com, save 25% off a rest of season subscription with the promo code HUSTLE. You can read Dwain's work. You can use the college football guide. You can get into PFF Greenline, all their betting content. It's a blast. Tons of locked articles magically open up for you with promo code HUSTLE, and you're going to kick ass in your season-long leagues. Dwain, what's going on, my friend? How's everything going?
Man, things are good. I can't believe that it's week 11. That's what I was just telling Ian earlier. It's crazy. Like, I feel like this just started. Now it's down to most folks probably have 2 weeks left, right, to get into the playoffs in their fantasy league. So
got four. If you're in a regular league, you get four. You got 4 weeks left because you're going to go 15, 16, 17, right?
Yeah, most people I know, like week 11 and 12 are the last two regular season weeks, and weeks 13, 14, 15 are their playoffs still. But
man, that's good. Whatever. Their leagues are crazy across America. We know that. But make sure, folks, you're following the show on Twitter at FF Hustle. I'm at Drake Fantasy. Dwain is, of course, at Dwain McFarland. Head over to our Veridian Global apparel store at veridianglobal.com. Just search Fantasy Football Hustle in the Football Collective section. And if you're on SiriusXM, if you're a subscriber, check me out. I'm on there weekends, Saturdays 3 to 5, Sundays 7 to 9 with Andrew Erickson. That's a lot of fun. And we did our first Twitter Spaces event on Thursday night. It was myself, Dwain, and Ian Harditz. We previewed Thursday Night Football and took questions. It went so well. We're bringing it back this week. Make sure you're following at PFF_fantasy on Twitter. And we're going to put it out again. It was a good time, Dwain. And I'm excited with that because just like this show where we get to interact with our audience in our YouTube channel, people can come on and just shoot the breeze with us, ask us questions about week 11. So that's what we love to do. Hang out with all our fun friends in the industry.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's anytime there's a new way that we can engage, like I'm all for it. Yeah, I'm down for it. And we are getting a lot of people in here saying they've got 4 weeks left. Most of my big leagues, I just have weeks 11 and 12 left, and then it's playoffs.
Oh, well, again, the only league we care about, Dwain, is the one that I split the entry fee with you because that is the most important.
We only have 2 weeks left, so you know that.
I'll show up and I'll sprinkle a little magic on the team tonight. So,
use it.
Let's get the Busch Light apple cracked and get into week 11 of the Fantasy
Light apple.
Hustle. Oh yeah, they've been kicking around for a while. Let's see. It's like an old apple cider now, man. It's really fermenting here in the can. Shout out to our buddy Cody Main. He's a big Busch Light apple fan. All right, now we're kicked off. And the waiver wire is pretty bleak. So what we're going to do tonight is kind of hit on some situations, get Dwain's thoughts on a player or team, and focus on those squads that we kind of want to maybe pick a player from for the stretch run. And I want to start in Carolina, where Cam Newton returned, lit a fire under the Panthers' asses. Newton scored touchdowns both on his first 2 touches, rushing and receiving. So besides Cam likely being the starter for the rest of the season, we also have Christian McCaffrey back doing what he does best, score fantasy points. He notched 26 PPR points without scoring a touchdown. Cam also resurrected the ghost of Robbie Anderson, who's been on the side of milk cartons for the last 2 months. The schedule, though, is a little rough. It's up and down. Next 2 weeks, you get the football team and the Dolphins, then a bye week. before games with Atlanta, Buffalo, Tampa, and New Orleans in the fantasy finals. So, Dwain, let's break it down here. Is Cam Newton in a one quarterback league someone that should be owned?
It just, it depends on how deep the league is. Probably not. I mean, we just have a lot of good quarterbacks, but
yeah,
I think you put him just outside of like the QB1s, right? There's a mix every week of really high-end QB2s. He'll probably be in it several times, especially over the next few weeks while he really has some choice matchups. I think the biggest thing we want from Cam Newton, Drake, is really just like, can he just be better than Sam Darnold? Can he just be good enough to help, DJ Moore survive? Can he be good? Robbie Anderson would just be like a plus. Like right now, like I want somebody that can support DJ Moore. Christian McCaffrey, like you mentioned, he's already doing his thing. He's working his way back up in snaps. Rushing attempts were down a little bit, but he was way up in the routes, targets. 32% target share last week for Christian McCaffrey. So like just the number one receiver on the team. But he did get the 2-minute offense, long down distance, all that stuff's basically coming back to him. So we're probably not far away from McCaffrey being like 80%, the snaps and true every down tight back. Cam could snipe some short touchdowns from him, but the beauty with McCaffrey, he catches so many passes, like you mentioned, he only has one touchdown in the season. It's only 6% of his fantasy points for the season is that 1 6-point touchdown. So he does just fine without it. And eventually we know that McCaffrey's going to score some touchdowns. So like he's as long as he's healthy, he's really probably he's in the top 3 for sure. It's kind of hard not to rank him as the RB1. We do have a couple of other backs though, that just really truly get that every down usage now. Kind of like what McCaffrey used to get, and Najee Harris. So he's kind of always in the conversation as well. So anyway.
Thoughts on DJ Moore? Is he a guy to trade away maybe if you can get anything for him, or is he somebody maybe on the cheap now you want to acquire? I know he's kind of been maddening for fantasy owners of late because the quarterback play has been so bad, but Cam Newton's not really a guy with his arm I trust a whole lot. So I think DJ Moore is going to be in a lot of emails across America as people are like, hey, here's this guy, and I'll throw in this guy, and how about DJ Moore?
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on what you can get for him. I mean, he's finished 40th, 47th, and 48th in PPR the last 3 weeks. So
yikes.
It's probably kind of hard to move him right now. It's probably more of a buy low. But at the same time, like we don't know for sure if Cam can really revive, DJ Moore or not. Like all we know is it's not Sam Darnold, right? And at this point, I think we'll take that. But to your point, like we don't know how good Cam's going to be as a passer. One side of the coin, I could say, Cam played for New England, which was, what weapons did he have in New England? Like he had Jacoby Myers really, and that was it. Like he had nothing. So this is definitely an upgrade for him, getting to play with Moore, Anderson, Terrace Marshall, Christian McCaffrey out of the backfield. Like this is by far, like this receiving core runs laps around what he had with the Patriots last year. It runs laps around what the Patriots have this year. So
yeah,
maybe he can land somewhere in between. Cam's not what he used to be, but this is definitely a better receiving core than what he had, before. I mean, he's played with DJ Moore before, right? So he's got that. He's played with McCaffrey before, so he knows those two players. He's definitely having to learn a new scheme with Joe Brady. This isn't the same offense that he ran, under Scott Turner, where he had a nice year about 3 years ago. But we'll have to wait and see. I'm hopeful, Drake. But it's probably hard to sell on Moore now. Probably really the only thing you can do is try to buy.
Yeah. How about in Philadelphia? We've gotten to that point in the show, folks, pretty early tonight. The Eagles passing. Yeah. Hey, so what are you going to do? So if you guys know from listening to this pod, the Eagles have a newfound identity. I told you this 3 weeks ago, and it's running the damn ball. Over the last 3 weeks, they're running 62% of the time. And over those same last 3 weeks, they've run 126 times, which is tops in the entire league. Sunday, they're likely to welcome back Miles Sanders. So when he left with an ankle sprain, you remember, they were throwing it all over the yard. Now he walks back into a lineup that's focused on pounding the rock. Interesting buy low candidate, I think. So Dwain, what would you be willing to go after Miles Sanders to kind of bolster your RB2 flex position? And, what are you looking to maybe give up to get him? Because we don't know if Jordan Howard's going to maintain a role in this offense, if he just comes back in and Boston Scott's sent to the bench. It's interesting times in Philly in that run game.
Yeah, I think Miles Sanders, I put him as, my buy low this week in the utilization report. So the way I look at it is this, he comes back and let's say he's in a 3-way committee with the other backs, really a 4-way committee when you include Jalen Hurts. Say that happens. He's probably still going to have the same value as he had before, just because it's a bigger pie, right, as far as rushing goes. But if by some chance, like he really has a bigger role than any of the 3 players we've seen while he's, been out, or like if he somehow really took back his near every down role that he had before, which like there's a range of outcomes we could be talking about here. Anything above, right, just being in a full-on committee with the rest of these guys, I still think he's the best back in this backfield. Right. He's
For
also
sure.
got the most draft capital. Now, he wasn't drafted by Sirianni, and this coaching staff, but I think there's definitely upside. The key is you just really want to play. You want to pay an RB3 price, right? You want to pay the price of someone that doesn't think they're giving up a starting running back. They're giving up what you just said. Their backup running back, their what the heck flex, their RB2 in a pinch week when they've got bye weeks, right? If someone still values Miles Sanders for some reason as really being an RB2, you're probably not going to be able to make a deal that really works for you and for your team. Just depends on how deep your roster is. But yeah, I do like going after Sanders. I don't want to overspend though, because there is a range of outcomes, right? And the bottom end of it is he is in a complete committee, still what he was before. But remember, we didn't really like what we had before when he was the every down back and they passed all the time. So that would put him in a situation where it's going to be hard for you to really get him in your lineup. So you just have to make sure, that you're not overspending. And by overspending, let's not talk backs, right? Most people don't want to trade backs for backs, but let's say, you've got receiver assets and you're willing to make a move. Like players I would be thinking about, here would be, along the lines of, a Christian Kirk, Tyler Boyd, Cole Beasley, Corey Davis,
My God, you should be able to get Miles. Those guys should be dropped in half the leagues in America.
Yeah. Who? Tyler Boyd? Tyler Boyd's on everybody's roster.
I've seen him getting dropped a few times this week. I dropped his ass 3 weeks ago. But
you play in these little wimpy leagues, Drake. You got to step up to the real leagues where people don't just dump Tyler Boyd. But you're telling the truth. Like there's so many different kinds of leagues. But we're talking about receivers that are great. I'm naming off receivers that are graded in my top 36 for the week. So basically what I'm getting at is you're trading a wide receiver 3. You don't want to go trade. You're not trading away Terry McLaurin or T Higgins or anybody like that to go get Miles Sanders. It's got to be something lower. You just don't want to overpay for it. But if you can get a hold of Miles Sanders, there's definitely a case for upside.
The Eagles' passing game is as funneled as it gets. Devonta Smith in Week 10 saw 25% of the Birds' targets and 41% of their air yards. The only other player worth rostering from a passing perspective is Dallas Goedert. He left Sunday's game with a concussion. Hopefully he's back for this week's contest. There's a lot of talk now about how great Jalen Hurts is and how he's progressed as a passer. But in reality, the team has taken the ball out of his hands. He threw 3 passes in the second half Sunday, and 1 was intercepted. So as your article points out, he has seen nearly 100-yard per game average drop versus the first 7 games. So let me ask you your thoughts on Hurts as a rest of season quarterback for fantasy. Mind you, they still have a week 14 bye looming.
Yeah, he's a low-end QB1. He's no longer a high-end QB1. It's because now he's basically what we thought we were getting when we drafted him, which was plenty from his legs, but probably really a limited upside as far as his passing game. And so, I would think of him as between ranked QB9, QB12. He's still a viable starter. Like for someone you got for basically for nothing, you got him in the 11th and 12th round. Some of you got him probably way later than that. That's typically where I had to take him if I wanted him in the leagues that I play in. And Jalen Hurts is one of my most rostered quarterbacks for the season. I still feel good about it. I just got spoiled early on, Drake, when I knew that, they drop back and pass all the time, and he got the scrambles, and he basically owned 30% of the rushing attack. He was getting all the work inside the 5. Now he's given some of that away. He's still fine. Like he's still second in designed rushing attempts on the season for quarterbacks. He's only behind Lamar Jackson at 23% of his team's attempts. And that pie is bigger. So I think he's fine, but he's more along the lines, and I don't want folks to take this wrong, but he's more along the lines of what we've seen in the past with he's a better passer than Tim Tebow. But remember when Tim Tebow basically would still just always give you 20, 23 points, something like that, right? Even though he was terrible as a passer. Taysom Hill, right? Not the best passer, but we know he's good as a rusher.
Great
to run a lot.
Great
so that's really where Hurts fits now, which is fine. There's a place for that in fantasy.
Sure.
So where you drafted him, you're still getting value return, right, on your draft pick. And you actually got more value than you could have ever imagined with the way the games went early this season. And look, there's always a chance. Look, the Eagles can't stay that close in all these games. Like eventually somebody's going to kick their ass again, right? And you're going to get some of those games where Jalen does have to throw more. I think overall, though, they are just more efficient, Drake, like in this version of the offense. The receivers seem to be playing better. They're picking their spots. Defenses are having to worry about, really taking care of the running game. So it's just an interesting situation where less is kind of more for Philly right now as far as passing attempts.
A couple of questions in here. I'm going off script now, but a lot of guys asking about Mike Williams from the Chargers.
He's got the Cortland Sutton flu. That's really good. I like that.
So because, this show really is about me asking Dwain about my fantasy teams, guy under the hidden guise of helping you guys out there. So I own Mike Williams in a few leagues also. So let's talk about Mike Williams. So he, to start the season, was killing it. I mean, this guy was a top 5 wide receiver for a while, and then he got nicked up, and now he's back, and they just haven't seemed to be able to connect on some of those deep balls. He has missed a few in the end zone, hit a few targets 2 weeks ago in the end zone. Now, as we approach this trade deadline, do you think Mike Williams is a guy you'd be going after or someone you're trying to trade away?
Mike Williams is still a player I want to go after. And the reason why, remember the early part of the year and it was all Mike Williams and Keenan Allen wasn't getting his. And now look, Keenan Allen has over 30%. Here's Keenan Allen's target shares over the last 3 weeks, 33%, 35%, 35%. Now there is a difference because we know Keenan Allen is capable of that. He's shown us that multiple times in his career. I had Mike Williams on my fade list to begin the season for one very specific reason. His targets per route run were never great for being an early first-round pick. Like he never demanded the targets that you would think he should get as that pick. So to say there's zero doubt in my mind, I can't say that, like honestly, with a clear conscience. I do have doubts still with Williams. But what I am buying into, Drake, is it's a pass-first offense. Justin Herbert is a good young quarterback. Yes, the offense has some challenges. They get into long down and distance too often. They throw the ball short a lot. But, if we think about it, the throwing the ball short is really what made Mike Williams early in the season. He wasn't having to live off of those 20-yard bombs all the time, right? He was really coming through on that Mike Thomas kind of role, working underneath 10, 11, 9-yard ADOT, like on a lot of these passes that he was getting. And the good news is we've seen his ADOT come back down some. Last week was kind of weird. It was a 1.6. If you took the penalty,
I thought that was a typo.
No, it wasn't a typo. I did too. Believe me, when I first saw it, I went back and checked it. So, but when I took the penalties out and the plays that got called back, it got a little better, Drake. It was like a 4.5. So, but I think that's actually positive, right? Because they're using him all over the formation. The thing that I noticed with Williams, he has been struggling the last several weeks against single man coverage, was only getting open about 30% of the time. Now, he's not a big separator. He's more of a win when you get open kind of guy, but that had been the difference early in the season. He's really getting some of these design concepts that gave him cleaner looks than what he had seen in the past. And last week, like he did a really good job. Last week, like you normally don't get this much man coverage, but this goes like to your Eagles. So 15 out of 25 times he faced single man coverage. That's a lot in a game. He faced it 25 times, but he got open on 15 of those routes. So, because I was worried, like, is he not healthy? But like to me, that says that he's probably still healthy. Like he's getting open. He's still in an offense that I like that passes the ball a lot. I can't say it's a guarantee, Drake, but overall I'm buying into the offense. I do still believe he's the second best target on the team. I think it's Keenan Allen, which we had always said, even when Williams was going nuts, like, hey folks, Keenan Allen's going to come around. Then it's probably Mike Williams and Austin Eckler. And then you have the tight ends that sprinkle in. So sometimes these things happen. And there could be something going on with his injury. It was on my to-do list today, and I got busy with like 4 other things. I really want to go back. So I'll probably do it tonight, later, or early in the morning. I'm just going to go, because we have some cool tools at PFF. I'm just going to go play the reel. I'm just going to go watch every route, right, that he's run. I go back and I watch these games, but I specifically want to pay attention just to Mike Williams and really dig into it, because a lot of people have a lot of questions about it.
That's something that you really broke out this week for the first time, was talking about players versus specific coverages and man coverage a lot. I know you talked about CeeDee Lamb, you talked about Mike Williams. So really something great. Anybody jump off the page in terms of your, versus single man coverage research you've done this week?
Well, number one, just so folks understand why single man is important. Number one, single coverage is a sticky stat, but man is better because there's so many nuances and different things going on with zone. Zone could be a match concept. It could be you're handing really a player off to the next player, and that's your only role. There's just a lot of different things that go on with it. Whereas man coverage is pretty clear. It's easy for our charters at PFF to chart it. They can easily tell when they're getting, single man coverage. It's a lot easier than identifying some of these more complex coverage schemes and some of the things that you see in the NFL. So number one, you just get cleaner data. Number two, at the end of the day, football's still, these one-on-one matchups a lot of time. Right. And so the other thing I've noticed in doing this research, Drake, is the best receivers, when they get single man, their quarterbacks light them up. So it's a situation where quarterbacks are looking for it. So you want to know that you've got players that can win in that situation. So one, you've got a sticky stat year over year, something that, whenever you see that it mattered 1 year is typically sticky to the next year for the player. So we can also use that to look for regression and things like that. If we see a player having a tough time or a good time, you can also use it to understand, like, hey, is the receiver actually able to get? Why are they not getting targets? Is it because they can't get open? Now that doesn't tell the whole story, but it's just one piece, right? And it at least allows you to kind of dig that one level deeper. Like, had I gone and looked at Mike Williams this weekend and been like, well, crap, he had man coverage 25 times and he beat it once, like that. I wouldn't like that. But when I went back and saw what he was able to do, that was actually a positive thing, for me, just looking at Williams this week. A player that jumps off is on the same team. Keenan Allen is beating single man coverage 75% of the time he faces it. That's insane. Devontae Adams is really good at it. That's a lot of the same guys you would think, Drake.
Sure.
Your best receivers in the league are really good at it. Stephon Diggs, he saw it this last week, like 15% more than what he normally does. And what happens? He has one of his best games, because what I was just saying earlier, when the quarterbacks they get these single man looks, like they go there. They know that cornerback can't handle, Stephon Diggs. So yeah, it's something I'm digging more and more into. I wanted to start simple with the single man stuff, but I always want to keep trying to push this stuff forward. I didn't do it for every single team. I tried to pick the spots this week where I saw something that really jumped out. At me. And so I'm going to work on trying to more automate some of this, so I can be something that I can look at quicker to quickly pull stuff into the utilization report. This is my first week to do it. But I'm excited about it. And the response on Twitter has been really good. I put a lot of stuff out there just to see what people were, what they thought about this data. And the tweets were very well received. I got a lot of responses on them, a lot of questions, kind of like what you just had. And I think it's a great way to really look at utilization, going forward. It's like a new nuance, a new layer, really. And I want to get zone to be part of it as well. But there's just more research that I've got to do to make sure I understand exactly how it's working. I've got this huge document of how everything works that I could tell you guys about it, but then I'd have to kill all of you because it's all this proprietary information. But it's honestly me trying to learn exactly how we chart and grade all these things so I can make sure I'm using it right.
They give it to me too, but they know I'm not going to use it. So
it's a long document. I reached out to the process owner yesterday and he sent it over. But it's awesome. We've got videos on how to look at it, these diagrams and everything. So I was studying all that yesterday and a little bit today. So I'm super excited. I think it's a whole new, just opening for different things we can be doing that you can't really get anywhere else.
Speaking of how defenses are responding to certain players, I want to talk about Darren Waller for a second. Darren Waller is still in a PPR tight end 7. He's averaging 13.2 points per game. I want to read from your utilization report at pff.com. It says, you can't ask for better underlying utilization for a tight end than what Waller's getting. He remains a top-notch option with an excellent track record. But, and here's the key part, some fantasy managers can't see past the last several games. And, of course, he did have a touchdown called back. I worry with Henry Ruggs being gone for his obvious, terrible situation. If now we're just going to see double and triple teams on Darren Waller going forward because they don't have anybody else. Who are you going to throw it to? Deshaun freaking Jackson? Did you see that?
But this isn't new. This has been going on for forever for Darren Waller. This has been the Raiders haven't had anybody outside for 3 years. So this is really not anything new. They didn't And honestly, Henry Ruggs wasn't that great. Like, as far as demanding targets, yeah, he was helping stretch out the field.
That's what I
look,
mean.
Here's the thing. Waller gets help. Like, he sees quite a bit of help coverage. A lot of the best tight ends do. But the beauty is you're working inside against safeties. You're working inside against linebackers. I think all of this will level out. I still think he's a top 3 tight end. The utilization is too good. I think this is a sample size thing. We will get a rebound. He will bounce back. Can I say which week? No, because every week is its own small sample size, really, right? But at the same time, like when I look historically at all of these trends, over the last 10 years, like Darren Waller scores A+ across the board. You cannot ask for better. So for me, he's a buy low. Like he's a buy low. Look, not every team is just going to have Darren Waller figured out. Like we see this all the time. Certain teams can take away certain weapons, other teams can't. So not everything is, replicable whenever these defensive coordinators are really trying to hone in on what they're going to do. The other thing is, remember, like you're watching 3 or 4 weeks of film. Guess who's going to start popping up like more? It's not going to be Waller as much. Now, I don't know who is going to pop up because they don't have anybody else, Drake. Hunter Renfrow has actually been I continue to probably underrate Hunter Renfrow too much, but freaking wide receiver 27, 11, and 9 in the last 3 weeks, despite, having limited routes, but his targets per route run are excellent. But Renfrow plays one of those spots that's really hard to take away, right? He's playing a lot of those little underneath option route type things, and he's just got great timing, with Derek Carr.
There's a guy, Hunter Renfrow, if you're in a full PPR league.
You just said he's released in most leagues.
I didn't say Hunter Renfrow. I said Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd sucks. Enough of him. So Hunter Renfrow, though, if you're in a full PPR and you've got like 3 wide receivers you start and a flex, real sneaky guy to go trade for here at the wire. So I like that. I, again, started Darren Waller this week, lost by a few points. My team's hanging on by a thread, real kick to the balls. But your balls will thank you, though, if you can help them this holiday season with Manscaped. Manscaped just launched new products, including their all-new Ultra Premium Body Wash, 2-in-1 shampoo and conditioner. It's time to give yourself or someone who needs it the gift of beautiful skin, hair, and balls this holiday season. Go to manscaped.com. Use code PFF for 20% off and free shipping. This week, check it out. We're going to give you something here at The Hustle. This week, we're giving away multiple Performance Package 4.0s. Here's what we want you to do. Rate and review this podcast. Go to iTunes, rate and review the show, leave your email, and we're going to pick some winners to get these things. Now, folks, they're going to send you all kinds of cool stuff here. If you're watching on YouTube, you're in for a treat. This is the ball toner, which mine is still in the wrapper, which probably means, why my wife stays away from me. This is ball deodorant. Dwain, did you ever think we'd be showing ball deodorant on the Fantasy Football Hustle?
No, I don't know if I should be proud or I don't even know.
And also, look at some of this other great stuff you get. Here is the lawnmower 2.0 that you're going to get, and an ear and nose hair trimmer. It's really high quality stuff. Comes in a great package. So you're going to really enjoy that. 'Tis the season to load up on Manscaped products. So get something for yourself, your dad, your brother, your friends. The best gift of all, Manscaped Performance Package 4.0. Get 20% off and free shipping with code PFF at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com using code PFF. So if that was a kick in the balls, this kind of massaged it a little bit. I played Ramondre Stevenson this week after I snagged him on waivers a week ago. The news that he was active brought a smile to so many faces, including mine. The rookie looked incredible, Dwain. He finished the week as RB2 with 27.4 PPR points, 20 carries, 100 yards, 2 touchdowns, even caught 4 balls. But, Dwain, I'm afraid this party might not last. The Pats play Thursday. Damian Harris could be active. He was limited already in Monday's practice. If Harris is active, here's my question to you. Is Ramondre Stevenson startable anymore? Because we know what Belichick likes to do.
No. He took over Damian Harris's role last week. That was really it. He got a few more targets on early downs than what we've seen from Harris in the past. But the Patriots, we actually have seen a few games where Harris has been targeted. The Patriots decided they were going to win that game by throwing early on. So that's kind of what played into it. I do think Stevenson's a little bit better of a receiver. I still think Damian Harris is the better running back. Better between the tackles. He's just a more physical runner. I watched Stevenson. I went back and did watch that game, and I thought he looked okay. I thought he basically got what was given to him. But you can say that about a lot of backs. Look, for running backs, we always say the number one thing we want is volume. And Stevenson got all the volume. What happens? He puts up, but I think he's an average running back. Not that I think Damian Harris is like this world beater. I don't think we'll be able to use Stevenson this week if Harris is active. And it does sound like Harris is probably trending towards playing, but it is a Thursday night game. Mm-hmm. So we'll have to be ready a little earlier than what they would have wanted him to, since he didn't practice at all last week. I didn't read today. I know he was limited, but I didn't read anything about where he is in the concussion protocol.
He's still in the protocol.
Well, I knew he's still in it, so yeah. I didn't know if it was just like one more step tomorrow where he's got to get the clearance from the neurologist, or if that's coming Thursday or not. I don't know how soon we're going to hear.
Yeah,
but if he's out, Stevenson's in play. The other thing is Brandon Bolden, I think he did practice. He had hurt his hip in that game. So there's a couple of paths here to Stevenson seeing a little bit more value this coming week. Even if Damian Harris plays, we could see a little bit more of Stevenson if Brandon Bolden were to miss time.
I'm telling you, I'm packaging Stevenson everywhere to try to move him before this Thursday game, because maybe there's some guys in your league, they got kids, they got jobs. They're not as up on what is going on with Damian Harris, and you might be able to move him for somebody before that game kicks off. You mentioned getting volume, and that's kind of what we want. So no team has a better fantasy playoff schedule than the San Francisco 49ers. So besides this week's matchup with Jacksonville, the Niners games in weeks 15 to 17 are at Cincinnati, home for Atlanta, and at Tennessee. Now, I don't think you're going to be getting Deebo Samuel anytime soon in a trade offer, but when we're talking about volume, Eli Mitchell could be in play. Now, he needed a procedure on his finger today. We're going to see. They still think he's going to play this week, but he ran 27 times for 91 yards against the Rams on Monday Night Football. This is exactly how the 49ers want to play going forward. So, Dwayne, with that schedule, are you buying or selling Mitchell, knowing he's still likely, though, only a 2-down back?
Yeah, look, if you're the lead back in the 49er scheme, even though you're only 2 down, like, I want you on my fantasy roster. I don't really care what your name is. Like, it could be Brian Drake.
It doesn't matter what your name is.
It doesn't. Like, I want you on my team. I know I see all this stuff out there about Elijah Mitchell, how good of a back he is. Some people think he's great. Some people don't. Like, for me, I just want the back that's the lead back. I mean, that's why we wanted Trey Sermon, and it didn't work out with him. If it ends up being Jeff Wilson, I'll be happy with Jeff Wilson. Jeff Wilson should be stashed. Like, that's a stash everybody should have on their roster is Jeff Wilson. Because Mitchell, we have seen, like, he's been banged up a lot this season. When they really get things going, like, he's nice because he can hit those chunk plays. Like, I never thought we would be saying Elijah Mitchell would have, 27 rushes, in a game this season. But whenever it was a game script thing, right? I mean, they were blown. I mean, that was a blowout for all intents and purposes of the Rams last night. I mean, they jumped on them early and they just kept rolling them. So you get in those kind of games, and you'll get those 4 or 5 times a year with the 49ers offense. And then that's the benefit you get, or those big days like that. He is not the passing down back. You're right. Even with JaMychal Hasty out, they had Kyle Juszczyk doing it. But it didn't matter in the game script. Like, they just weren't facing long down and distance. They didn't need the 2-minute offense. So that meant there was just plenty of work for Elijah Mitchell. But I'm very interested in Jeff Wilson Jr. He actually was out there for about 25% of the rushing attempts, Drake. So that's the one small concern, Brian, is if all of a sudden we're in a situation where, because they rolled right on the Rams, but if we get in a situation where, and a lot like more of the game scripts they've been in before this one with the Rams, and all of a sudden if he's having to give away 25% of the rushing attempts to Jeff Wilson, and that drops from, like, today he gets like 65%, and all of a sudden, say he's seeing 50 to 45% in a game script that isn't, a blowout win, that's the one possible landmine left for Mitchell. But it's not something I'm just going to be overly concerned about. My bigger point is just make sure you've got Jeff Wilson rostered.
From one banged up running back to another, but we got a little positive news on Aaron Jones and his MCL sprain. Word is he could only miss 1 or maybe 2 games, but that opens the door for AJ Dillon. Now, if he's on your waiver wire, literally stop what you're doing and enter the claim. He's rostered in 73% of Yahoo, but only 58% of ESPN leagues at our time of recording. So there's still an opportunity to get him. Dwain, this Packers team just plays so slow. They're last in the NFL in plays per minute. So what are reasonable expectations for Dillon as he's inserted into lineups, likely until the Pack goes on bye week 13?
Yeah. I mean, he's going to be an every down back. Is he going to be a great receiver? Probably not. That doesn't matter. They'll adapt like the kind of routes and stuff that they're really utilizing him for. You know, Aaron Jones can do a lot more pass to scrimmage down the field. You're not going to see as much of that from AJ Dillon, but that's fine. They'll just use different concepts. They'll get him out in swings. They'll use screen passes, little things like that to get him the ball in the running game. Like, I don't expect a ton of targets for AJ Dillon, but he could see 10%, right? And I expect him to handle 70% of the rushing attempts, if not a little bit more. They don't really have anybody else, you know, that's that interesting. We'll have to actually see what they do, right, with the running back spot behind him. See how many other guys they're going to have active for this next game. So, yeah, I like Dillon. Think he's a low-end RB1, high-end RB2 until we get Aaron Jones back. And he definitely has the ability to have a boom game. He's not an explosive runner. Like, if you look at his chunk plays created, you know, 10-plus yards or more, explosive runs, one of the lower rated in the season for, you know, how many carries he has. But his yards after contact are still strong. You know, he gets a lot of carries of 2 or more yards, like, so he doesn't get stuffed a lot. So he has these other positives. It's a different kind of vibe you're going to get from him than what you're going to get from Aaron Jones.
Yeah, man, if you're stashing AJ Dillon, you are loving life right now. All right, say you own AJ Dillon, Dwain, and your trade deadline's this weekend, and he's a luxury for you, right? Yeah, you could put him in your lineup, but people are going to come calling because running backs, especially 3-down running backs on good offenses, are worth their weight in gold. What do you want back for AJ Dillon?
It just depends on what you need on your team. I mean, the good thing about it, when somebody comes calling for an asset like that, usually they're in a real pinch, Drake. You know, so you kind of got to look at their roster, see what you can do. But I would totally be willing to move him if he is a luxury to you, right? These are the perfect types of players to trade away. All of a sudden they become the starter. You know it's going to last a few weeks, and so you move on. Now, it is later in the season, so you have to keep that in mind. Do you want to give it to – it depends on, you know, who you're trading to. Is it another team in your league that you're like, wow, if I give this guy AJ Dillon, like, he's going to be a real nightmare for me until he gets X back, right? Whoever it is, you know, maybe it's Aaron Jones or Alvin Kamara, someone like that. So you just got to kind of take all that into consideration. But yeah, I would absolutely be willing to move him, Drake, if he was a luxury, and I can get the right, you know, return on him.
I really want to get your thoughts on this Dallas passing game. So with Michael Gallup returning, the biggest loser this Sunday was Dalton Schultz. While he's still tight end 8 on the season, Schultz disappointed for fantasy. He did just miss a touchdown, but fantasy managers see 1 catch for 14 yards in the box score and scratch their heads. Is it time to sell Schultz, and also what other wide receivers might you be buying at the deadline in Dallas?
Yeah, I mean, I would be willing to sell on Schultz. You know, getting Gallup back, we had talked about, was probably going to hurt. Like, his routes are fine with Jarwin out. Like, he's up over the 80% mark, but his targets per route run, you know, they've really dropped. So I don't even know how much you can really get for Schultz right now. I think he's a low-end tight end 1, high-end tight end 2. But I was never 100% on the Schultz train. I always kind of thought it was going to stop just because I watched the Cowboys so much, and I like him. He actually could have had a touchdown pass last week, Ian.
Whoa.
Drake, he actually had a touch. I've
only been doing shows with you for 4 years here, Chief.
Yeah, well, I
do
like 10 a week with someone else. So, you know, he could have had a touchdown reception on a stick and nod pass like this last week at the back of the end zone. So, like, his box score could have actually been better. Like, and it was a really good route. Dak just barely overthrew him. So I don't want to act like, you know, Dalton Schultz is complete dust. You know, and you're not complete dust either, Brian. You know that I love you. Yeah. I'm sorry. It's just you guys know my schedule Sunday night through Tuesday night. Like, I am running on fumes. So, what was the other question about the receivers?
Who are you trading for? I mean, I know you put some good work in about CeeDee Lamb, and boy, oh boy, that guy looks unbelievable. If you got to trade for one, I mean, Amari Cooper just kind of seems like he's laying in the weeds here. You know, is that a guy that maybe you can get on the cheap compared to?
Amari's just not healthy.
Yeah.
But the problem is, like, Amari really hasn't been fully healthy for like 2 seasons. And so I don't know. Like, the routes he runs, the hits he takes. I feel like, Amari, for as young as he is, like, it's just adding up. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like it's getting to be like that Julio Jones thing where he's always got to be taking some, takes time off every game, takes awkward hits. Now he's tough. He plays through it, right? He'll actually get out there and practice in a limited fashion all week, and he'll suit up and he'll go. So I give him a lot of credit. But as far as a fantasy asset, CeeDee Lamb is the top option. This last week, some people probably get a little scared because his routes jumped down to 58%. But if you go look at really what he did over the first three drives, over the first half of the game before things were just in like complete blowout mode, he was still up around 80% of the routes. So I think he's going to be fine. He had the arm contusion, but Mike McCarthy said that is not a big deal. I'm kind of keeping an eye on it though, Drake. The Gallup thing, it does look like CD has really retained like the main role, and that Gallup is going to be the one having to try to earn, routes from these other guys. But it is something I always get a little concerned about, especially when the Cowboys now get ahead. They're willing to go into this, not quite as heavy as your Eagles, but they'll run the ball. I mean, they'll pass just 50% of the time. They've had games this year where they've ran the ball over 50% of plays. So that bothers me. But yeah, if there's like one, receiver on the Cowboys to really want to go after, I think it is Lamb, just because if you do get into situations where there's less passing to go around, like, I just want the most explosive player, Drake. And I think we've seen that. Lamb is the most explosive player. He is improving against man coverage. So he's starting to really get things done. And remember, the week before when he had a dud, dude, he was like, you remember, like, he was so close to having a huge game that week. Dak missed him on a deep throw that would have been a touchdown. He had a 24-yard reception called back due to penalty. So even though the week before he had busted, like, he could have been a top 5 receiver 2 weeks in a row now. The ball just didn't quite bounce his way in week 9 like it did in week 10.
So when we're talking about trading for players at the deadline, so this is something that I have always not struggled with, but I struggle when I see other people doing it. Like, they're like, you know what? I'm just kind of going to roll with what I have. And, you're in these fantasy leagues, play to win. Only one person is going to win. Shoot for the stars. Go get the best starting lineup you can. Trade away assets that you don't need. Like, if you're struggling and you got to get in and try to be that 5 or 6 seed, folks, go for it. That's what fantasy is. It's fun. Put all your chips into the middle. I know Dwayne's a big poker guy. I'm not, but I imagine that's what you do. You take your chips and you push them into the center of the table, right? That's what the trade deadline is. Go win yourself a fucking championship. All right. So, like, that's what we're here for. You want the belt, you want the trophy, you want the cash. Go get it done this week before the trade deadline. Don't sit there and go, oh, well, I still got James White on my bench. Like, what are you doing? No, go make a trade. Make it happen, guys. Come on. You get me fired up out here. We're fired up all season about Cordarrelle Patterson, but Cordarrelle Patterson's going to miss some time. He's probably not going to play this Thursday night game against New England. And there's rumblings, hey, Wayne Gallman could be taking over for Mike Davis, who stinks. But I read tonight, Falcons coach Arthur Smith was quoted as saying guys like Gallman only played because the Falcons have a Thursday night game and they were getting their asses kicked. So with this, CPAT out for a while, Davis just being Davis, is Gallman somebody that we should make a claim for, or was this just what Arthur Smith was saying? We were playing a scrub because we have a game coming up on Thursday.
I think we can lean to trusting him. I didn't have that info when I wrote today. I mean, it's kind of, the info is kind of conflicting with what he said. Number one, Cordarrelle Patterson did practice today. So
wow,
in a limited fashion. So who knows how effective he will be able to be. He's got a mild high ankle sprain, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. But with Gallman, I kind of find that interesting because once Cordarrelle Patterson was out of the game, immediately, and this was after 4 drives. Might have been the first play of the 5th drive, if I remember right. I can't. But it was really a split right away between Mike Davis and Wayne Gallman. It wasn't like just in cleanup duty, Wayne Gallman was out there. In the period, once Cordarrelle Patterson left, from that period until they pulled the rest of the starters from the game, started pulling the linemen and pulled Matt Ryan and et cetera from the game, 80% of the rushing attempts went to Wayne Gallman in that period. And he actually had a little bit more of the snap. Davis handled 40% of the snaps, only 20% of the rushing attempts, but he handled more of the passing down work. and Gallman was really more the early down guy. So I get what Smith is saying, and I don't really want to like try to roll Wayne Gallman out there anyway. I think it's kind of a risk, so it's probably enough for me to not do it. But at the same time, I kind of question like what he said, because like I said, like when they were still in the game, Gallman was out there with Davis. So we'll have to wait and see. I mean, I put Gallman as being a player, you drop 2 to 5% of your waiver wire on, just to see what you have. Because Patterson, even though he practiced, like it's a high ankle thing, we know that's something you can easily re-injure.
Sure.
And it could be something that could end up taking longer. And you know how these coaches do, Drake? It drives us crazy. We get this injury and we know they're probably out, and then they do this thing. Oh no, they're limited today. Yep. So it's like, you just don't know. Like, are they just doing that to jack with the other coach, especially someone like Bill Belichick? We don't know.
Odell Beckham is a Los Angeles Ram now. He ran a route in 25% of the Rams' pass plays in the first game. He played just 15 snaps. They got their asses kicked. It is what it is. Just want to get your thoughts on the game and OBJ going forward as an asset, how much he's going to learn this offense. Is he someone who's really going to take over that Robert Woods role? And I think after this first week, guys in fantasy league are fickle. Like, they just see something, even if it's wrong, they go with it. And they might say, Beckham stinks. And now there's a buying opportunity. So with what we saw from Beckham and the Rams getting, boat raced the other night, is Beckham kind of a guy now you're like, you know what? Maybe I'll take a shot on him if I can get him for the right price.
Yeah, I mean, I like Beckham. Surprisingly, he was in the top 10 in the league in beating single man press coverage, and he's top 10 in the league in beating single coverage. Now, a lot of people say, well, everything was off script and he wasn't really open because he wasn't where he wants to be. Look, like I heard those stories too, but my guess is that's a handful of plays. And that was the narrative that Cleveland used. Once they knew they're getting rid of him, you got to have something you can put out there to the press to say, here's why we're getting rid of the guy. And it was actually probably a nicer thing that they said that than the real reasons that they got rid of him. There's probably other issues that were going on with the way he's getting along with the staff. Apparently, like, the teammates all really loved him. But with Beckham, to me, the underlyings look like the talent is still there. He's got to stay healthy. That's a big thing. But it's just hard for me to not kind of want to be in on it, Drake. I mean, it's the Rams offense, and now you've got all these targets opening up from Robert Woods going away. He's not the same player, obviously, as Robert Woods, very different. Van Jefferson's obviously still going to be involved. Tyler Higbee could be a little bit more involved. But if I had to pick one of these players and think, wow, like, could they really boom? I think it's probably, Beckham. And if you look at Jefferson, he's done some nice things as well. So it could be him. Like, Jefferson really shouldn't be out there on waivers. If you're playing in a deeper league, 12 teams, with 15 to 20, players on your roster, Van Jefferson should be on squads in those types of formats. So I would lean 70% Beckham, 30% Jefferson, or maybe it's 60-30 and then 10% to being Higbee, really being, the big beneficiary of it. But I'd like to think that Beckham, if he can stay healthy, he could still push for top 24 for the rest of the way. I don't know where he'll end up the season because we're already so far into it. But it's a great offense, man. Like, I want to be part of, this Rams offense. And if I can get in on it and I can do it for cheap, you can't do that with Cup, right? Your only entry point is really probably Beckham.
How about Traquan Smith? I mean, I'm digging deep here now, folks. But Traquan's kind of starting to emerge. 2 touchdowns in his last 3 games, leading the team in routes the past 2 weeks. With or without Kamara, is Traquan Smith a player to target in some deeper formats?
Yeah. I mean, I've got him on, the utilization report today as being one of the potential waiver ads. You can probably get him for, pretty cheap. He's not a player I love just because historically his targets per route run have never been good. So he's never demanded the ball. But over the last 3 games, he's had a couple of nice spots. This past week, 19% targets per route run. His routes, like you mentioned, they're up 88%, 89% over the last 2 weeks. And he and Trevor Siemian seem like they may have a little something going. Now, it's not like the rest of the Saints receivers haven't also done something. I mean, Traquan's finished 31st, 43rd, and 18th. That was before Monday night's game, so maybe a little higher than 18. But Callaway, 66, but then a 25 and a 32. Deontay Harris has had a 28 and a 30 over the last 2 weeks. So really, Simeon's like getting all these guys a little more involved, right? These past 2 games, they've got like 550 yards passing, somewhere it's a little under that, but that's the most passing that the Saints have had in 2 games all season. So I think Simeon is actually an upgrade over Jameis Winston as far as in the passing game and running that offense kind of the way they want to run it, like Drew Brees, which is why I think we're seeing that Taysom Hill is not getting his role back. It's like John Payton is seeing something here with Simeon that, it's not great, but he likes it. And it kind of reminds him probably of what he was seeing with Drew Brees towards the end of his career. He thinks he might be able to manage things. And if that's the case, we could see a little bit more passing from the team. And right now you got Kamara out. So that obviously opens up a little bit more work for these guys. But to your point, Traquan is the player because Callaway's kind of had a chance all year. Right, Traquan's just now the guy that's coming back, getting healthy off of injury after missing basically the first 7 games, 6 or 7 games of the season. So he's the one that I'm like, okay, probably has the highest ceiling because we haven't seen, this year, and maybe he really can gel with Trevor Siemian.
All right, rapid fire to finish off this Week 11 episode of The Hustle. Well, let's start with our pal Shirley, Dwayne. She says, in one league, the T. Higgins manager wants to move on. I have Jamar Chase in that league. Is it crazy to roster Higgins and Chase on the same team? Rest of season schedule not favorable for the Cincinnati passing game. I'm actually in this exact same situation as I have both of them on a team. I traded and got Chase. I mean, they're throwing enough, and it's going to these 2 guys. Remember my quote, it's going to be on a billboard somewhere in Cincinnati. Tyler Boyd sucks. So, yeah, I'm fine with having both these guys if you have to. I mean, where else? I mean, how many more players are you going to get that's better than T. Higgins?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few passing offenses where you're just okay if you own multiple weapons from it. I would classify the Bengals as being one of those. So I'm fine with it.
Marcus Johnson in Tennessee. Julio Jones on injured reserve. I remember he was a guy, he can run a little bit, former Philadelphia Eagle. Worth a waiver claim this week?
Yeah, he actually had a nice game with the Colts. A couple of nice games with the Colts last year.
Yeah.
When we had our annual Paris Campbell, get hurt situation, and Ty was out last year, and so he had some nice games there. Had another nice game here. Routes are a little bit low, but they could expand after what he did. So I mean, he's flashed before. So he's a guy like if you want to put a little bit on him, you can. I think he's hard to trust in lineups this week, but if he does it again, they definitely are looking. Now we don't know how long it'll be before we get Julio back. He's out at least 3 weeks. And so, it could be a short-lived thing, but I mean, he's a flyer. He's worth a flyer.
How about Deonta Foreman? Here's the guy that I was texting you about a few weeks ago saying, hey, little birdie out there is talking about Deonta Foreman. And last week he was behind Adrian Peterson and Jeremy McNichols, but then now this week looks like he's kind of coming into his own, and AP is just kind of AP. He's an older guy. I mean, he had that great spin move in the hole on Aaron Donald, but I mean, Foreman looks a little better in my eyes. I'm no, watch the tape guy, but here's my question though, with Deonta Foreman, unless AP basically stops getting carries, how valuable can he really be in fantasy?
Yeah. Foreman is the guy I want to stash from this backfield at this point. But yeah, it's what you just said. You can't use any of them. You can't really use McNichols. You can't use Peterson. You can't use Foreman. But Foreman did kind of, he took a step forward. He did lead the backfield this last week, but it's still a true 3-way committee. And then you got Ryan Tannehill, stealing scores down inside the 2-yard line, so he can go out there and do his little basketball layup flip. So it's a situation where nice stash play for Foreman. But not something that you can really throw onto the field in your fantasy lineups.
Le'Veon Bell was cut today by the Ravens. I think it kind of took him by surprise. That signals that Latavius Murray is likely to come back. They still have Devonta Freeman, Tyson Williams, I guess, is still on this roster somewhere. I don't know why he's not getting more work. But our buddy Crunch wants to know thoughts on the Ravens backfield after Le'Veon gets cut.
Yeah, I think we're probably still just going to have a committee. But, I mean, the biggest thing is I think this is Devonta Freeman's backfield right now. Like when I say it's his, 58% of the snaps 2 weeks in a row, his rushing attempts have gone from 22% to 32% to 50%. His routes are between 30 and 50% every week. So I think we could see Latavius Murray come in, take the short down and distance work. We could also see a situation where, he carves out a little bit more away from Freeman. But I think right now, like everything I'm reading, like it's not the coaches love Freeman, but they're just in a spot where I think he probably is the lead back, even when Murray comes back. Like it's, these committee situations, it's not like we can be, these aren't the things we're the most confident about, with some of these calls we have to make. But I think Freeman is in a good spot. In fact, I mean, he's really created a utilization situation that no other back on this team's been able to, create over consecutive weeks so far this season. So I do think that that's a positive. So I think it's probably Freeman is at the top of the pecking order. Then you get Latavius Murray handling some of that short down. So Latavius really more in the Gus Edwards role, right? Devonta Freeman really more, I would say in the J.K. Dobbins role, right? And Williams is just a non-factor.
No, not at all. How bad are you, by the way, if you get cut by a Ravens team that's rolling out Latavius Murray and Devonta Freeman? Like, it's done for Lev Bell. Like, just hang him up, my friend. Somebody wants to know what's on the whiteboard behind you, Dwayne.
I don't know. Something my daughter drew. It's something from Among Us. I asked her, I was like, what is this? And like, are people going to be asking me about it? So
my kids do that in the neighborhood. They're like, we're going to play Among Us. And it just ends in little kids fighting about things. But
yeah.
The one thing you guys can't fight about is the quality of information you get here on the Fantasy Football Hustle and in the Utilization Report over at pff.com. Again, use promo code HUSTLE. Go over there, read the Utilization Report, read all the other great locked articles. Check Dwayne and I out. Thursday night, 7 o'clock. Ian Harditz is going to join us on Twitter. Just follow at PFF_fantasy. Maybe even the big PFF account will push out our Twitter Spaces event. I'll be hosting that and kicking questions from you guys to the two experts. And if there's a tie, then you're going to get my opinion to break it. So go the other way. Any other final stuff here, Dwayne, before we get out of here for week 11?
No, man. I think we've hit a ton of stuff. Unless you got a couple you're going to throw at me, just like to take us out.
All right. Let's see here. Tony or Jeff Wilson, if both are available in a half-point PPR?
Tony.
All right. Let's see. What's up with Hawkinson? I have Fryer and Muth. Should I just roll with him instead?
No. Hawkins is still by far the better player, running more routes. Everything's better. Like, it's just a fluky, weird week. Freiermuth's routes, all that kind of stuff went down. Targets per route run are still very encouraging, though. Freiermuth long-term, I really like. Dynasty asset, like, buy on Freiermuth.
Mm-hmm. Would you pick up Gronk or Everett this week if Goddard misses the week?
Well, if I knew Gronk was playing, I would take Gronk, but I'm worried about him. So you may have to go Everett.
This is an interesting one. Rest of season. I don't even know how you answer this. Rest of season. Zeke, Stephon Diggs, or DeAndre Hopkins in half-point PPR. I'm looking to trade for one to build an invincible squad.
Stephon
I mean, if you're looking, yeah, go get Stephon Diggs. So thanks so much, folks. We appreciate the time. Follow us on Twitter. The show is at FF Hustle. I'm at Drake Fantasy. Dwayne is, of course, at Dwayne McFarland. I don't want to see one of you guys get out hustled at the trade deadline. Not a one. If you're listening to this show, go out and dominate the rest of your league. Build yourself that invincible squad like our friend there, and never, ever get out hustled. We'll see you next week.